Coming to paperback and e-readers, ISIS Legacy. The sorority secrets from the goddess next door are revealed in this all-new ISIS series adventure. Pre-order your copy of ISIS Legacy on Amazon.com today. I was watching a Mr. Superboy video where he was talking about a 24-year-old white woman who allegedly murdered a man, dismembered his body, and then strew his body parts all across a Green Bay, Wisconsin property. Now, according to reports, your 24-year-old tailor business allegedly met with a 25-year-old man, smoked crystal meth, and then had a sexual encounter with him where she participated in deviant sexual behavior with chains and dog collars. And allegedly, as they were participating in these deviant sexual acts, this tailor business allegedly choked this man to death and then went out here and participated in some necrophilia, then went out here and then dismembered his body. Now, the police are seeing this as a disturbing, isolated incident, but when I take a critical examination of the behavior of tailor business, it fits right in line with the pattern and profile for females that I talk about in my upcoming book, The Woman Crisis. And in my upcoming book, The Woman Crisis, I talk about the crimes that women participate in, and this crime fits right in line with those types of crimes that I talk about in my chapters about the sexual deviancy of the female, and also talking about murder and the woman crisis. Now, this whole incident is an extremely disturbing one because most people, they would think of the American white woman as sweet and innocent if they buy into the narratives of Madison Avenue in Hollywood. However, today's American woman is not as sweet and innocent as you think. And the reason why your American woman is not as sweet and innocent as you think is because your American woman is somebody who can go out here and live a double life. Now, the mainstream media loves to show you this image of your American white woman as sweet and innocent, but your American white woman is not what you think she is. And many of these women, what they do, the reason why they can go out here and participate in these kinds of behaviors is because they have been out here being sexually promiscuous for years, and because they have been sexually promiscuous for years, they no longer gain pleasure from having a standard sexual encounter of intercourse with a man, and since that doesn't give them any pleasure anymore, what they do is start exploring sexual deviancy. And that's what happened here with your 24-year-old tailor business. Allegedly, she had possibly had so many sexual partners that she no longer got pleasure from those men as related to standard sexual encounters, and now she was exploring sexual deviancy with this individual. So she possibly looked to hook up with this man to participate in this sexual encounter. However, in order for her to be able to participate in this deviant sexual encounter, what this woman did was she smoked up some crystal meth with this man in order to get herself high enough to be able to participate in this sexual deviancy and lower her inhibitions enough that she could go out here and feel comfortable enough to participate in this deviant sexual act. Now, because this woman's inhibitions were lowered and she didn't have any sort of boundaries, what this woman did during the deviant sexual encounter was, as she was getting high on the power she was getting in this deviant sex act. And as she was getting high on the power she was getting in this deviant sex act, what this woman did was, as she was choking this man with the dog collar and chain, she was getting off on seeing this man react, because women are emotional, and because she was getting off on seeing this man's face change color and getting off on seeing this man start to choke up blood, she continued to further continue choking this man until this man wound up dying. And because she was getting off on the power she had over this man's life, that's what gave her pleasure. And again, this is some extremely disturbing behavior to participate in, but this is a type of sexual deviancy that some men and women participate in because they are so jaded by so many casual sexual encounters that they no longer receive pleasure from a basic sexual intercourse act, and they have just escalated their behavior to gain more pleasure, so they believe that violence is the only way to get pleasure. It is very similar to what happens with the beta male who goes out here and looks to participate in the deviant sexual acts that he does, that I talk about in The Man Crisis, where he looks to use his penis as a weapon to harm women. But in this case, we have a white woman who was looking to harm a man during a sexual encounter. And she, again, got off on the power that she had, and that gave her pleasure. And then, after getting herself pleasure sexually from taking the life of this man, she then got more pleasure by participating in necrophilia by playing with a dead man's body. And after she played with the dead man's body, she got even more pleasure by going out here and being able to dismember the man, and got pleasure from taking this man's body and destroying this man's body. And that's something that, again, is extremely disturbing to hear about, how she played with the man's corpse for 2 to 3 hours and then used knives to dismember the man's body. And it just shows, again, how this sexual deviancy that some of these women participate in can really get twisted and really get disturbing. But when you have a person who has been numbed to any sort of their behavior, this is the extremes they go to go out here and receive pleasure. And that's what makes these kinds of females extremely dangerous, is the fact that these women are practically numb on the inside, and because they are indifferent to the feelings of other people, they have no concern about doing harm to someone to the point where they wind up taking their lives. And since they have no problem taking somebody's life, they go out here and think it's okay. Now, what's really dangerous about these whole situations isn't just a woman like Taylor Schabusiness, it is the gynocentric response that society gives women, especially white women like this. Now, our gynocentric court system and our gynocentric, criminal justice system, they oftentimes try to find ways to make excuses for these kinds of white women, and by saying things like, oh, she's sweet and innocent, oh, she's a woman, and she wouldn't be capable of doing these kinds of things, and that's not the case at all. Many of these females are just as violent as a male in many cases, and the whole thing that allows these kind of women to be able to get a pass is the gynocentric viewpoints that give women an excuse for this kind of behavior. Now, there are some who would, in that gynocentric viewpoint, who would sit there and try to say, oh, it was the drugs. No, it was not the drugs, I will tell you. No, it was this woman's whole plan to go and do this with malice of forethought. Because when you're dealing with a deviant like this, what they do is they do this to get power, and oftentimes when you have a deviant like this, they participate in this kind of behavior because they're looking for the thrill. And the worst thing that the criminal justice system could do is give this woman a pass because she's a woman, and that would be a mistake because this woman acted with malice aforethought. She acted with depraved indifference, and when you're dealing with a person like that, that person needs to be punished to the fullest extent of the law. Because this wasn't just about a sex game for this woman where she participated in sexual deviancy. No, this turned criminal when this woman went out here and saw that this man's face was changing color and he was bleeding, and that's where she could have stopped, but no, she went to see if she could make this man's heart stop beating, and she wanted to go out here and then after this, then play with this man's corpse and then dismember his body. So this just showed again how twisted this woman allegedly was, and it just shows how your American woman is not sugar and spice and everything nice, and she's into some really depraved stuff. And this is something many Americans don't want to think about as related to American women, but over the last 50 years, the American woman is no longer the girl next door. No, she's gone to a darker place, and in that darker place, she has been extremely sexually promiscuous. She has been taking a lot of drugs, and she has been further so jaded from her numerous sexual encounters that she winds up participating in this sexual deviancy. And as she's been on this road to sexual deviancy, from having over 80 to 100 sexual partners, what has happened is she has now gone from sexual deviancy to participating in acts that are borderline sexual violence, or like this, a case where sex turned into extreme violence. And this is something many people don't want to acknowledge about America's women, who are in a serious state of crisis because many of these women who have been indoctrinated into feminism believe they can do whatever they want, and there's no sense of accountability because we have a gynocentric criminal justice system that looks to give them a pass, and we have a whole lot of males who are still thinking that this is the white girl next door, but the white girl next door is into a lot of very dark and twisted things. And these incidents like this, they are not a exception in many cases, even though they're disturbing. They are slowly becoming the rule due to a changing world as related to America's women. And this woman was a woman in crisis who was a ticking time bomb that wound up eventually exploding and then winding up participating in the murder of a man, then strangling him, decapitating him, and then cutting up his body. So this woman had possibly a lot of anger at men as related to probably numerous sexual encounters she had that didn't turn into relationships, and that anger simmered and boiled inside of her, and eventually it turned into a rage where she wound up going out here weaponizing her rage to destroy this man's body, to go after all of the men who she possibly had sexual encounters with. Because a lot of these women, again, when they've had sexual encounters with all of these men, they have all sorts of demonic spirits inside of them from those numerous sexual encounters, and those demonic spirits go out here and are part of why they participate in that violence. Now, that doesn't excuse this woman's behavior, because these women know what they're doing, and we need to stop seeing it as, oh, she's sweet and innocent. She didn't know what she was doing. She knew what she was doing. She knew how she was acting. This was malice aforethought, and our criminal justice system needs to start holding these women accountable the same way they would hold a beta male who participated in the same violent behavior accountable. And we need to hold these women accountable and hold them to the same standard of law, because your feminist, she wanted equality when she was out here, and we need to start holding these women accountable for their criminal acts of violence. Now, Mr. Superboy did say something about how they would say a black woman is more violent, but I don't see black women out here, even though they're having their fights in the restaurants and the bars and places like that, and the McDonald's. Like he said, there's not, it doesn't get this extreme. I only see these kind of cases from my years of research being these white women participating in these kind of crimes. But what I also see are a whole lot of people who give women like this and Casey Anthony passes, and them giving these women passes is what further exacerbates America's woman crisis, because this sets a legal standard that does not make things equal as related to our laws. And that's the thing that makes it where these women go out here and believe they can go out here and do this, because this is why these women go out here and believe they can go out here and do whatever they want, because no one sets a standard, nobody holds them accountable, nobody makes them take responsibility for their actions. And that's what, when you don't set boundaries with the court system, what these women do is further escalate their behavior, like your Taylor Schabusiness allegedly did here, by going out here and participating in a deviant sex act and then murdering a man because she believes that she can get off in the criminal justice system. And if we keep setting those legal precedents, these women are going to further escalate their behavior until we start to see women like Eileen Wuornos start to be the standard. And that's what happens when you have women in crisis and nobody holding them accountable. They escalate their behavior to disturbing behaviors like this. And the only way to get these women in crisis out of this kind of crisis is for men and responsible women to set a standard for society and go out here and reset order. That's the only way you're going to get things to change as related to things. But when I looked at this incident, it falls right in line with what I was writing about in my upcoming book, The Woman Crisis. And this incident definitely fits the pattern and profile of a white woman in crisis, a woman who went out here and thought she had so much power that she could go out here and take a man's life. And the only reason why women act like this is because responsible people don't hold her to the same standard we the people are supposed to be held to under the Constitution. Now, my book, The Woman Crisis, I'm hoping to have that out by the end of 2022, and I've finished the first draft of The Woman Crisis, and I'm trying to get it edited and ready to go. And in that book, I will be talking about why so many of America's women are participating in dysfunctional behavior like this, and how this culture has really hurt America's society. So I hope to have that book out later this fall as part of the SJS Direct 2022 catalog, and I hope you'll pick that book up and learn about why so many women are in crisis. But until then, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBook Store, and Google Play. And if you want to see me make more videos like this, you can donate to my Patreon, my PayPal, and my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. You think you've seen scares? Get ready for the horror of the Haida woman.